Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Jorge Navarro. I'm 32 now. I live in a modest third-floor walk-up in Brooklyn, far from the sprawling estates and marble floors of my childhood. From the outside, I look like any other tired man juggling work, a mortgage, and fatherhood. But there's a part of my story, one soaked in betrayal, legacy, and justice, that I've never shared. Until now. It started with a phone call. A cold Tuesday morning in January. I was at work, my desk cluttered with coffee cups, USB drives, and design specs for our latest urban energy model. My phone buzzed. The message was from Marco, my closest friend since college. I just heard. Your grandfather passed away. I'm so sorry, man. Call me if you need anything. I blinked at the screen. My world shifted. Abuelo Emilio Navarro, gone. I hadn't spoken to him in a couple of weeks, but last time we talked, he was sharp, even laughed when I told him Lily, my daughter, tried to invent a solar-powered pizza oven. We had plans, he wanted to visit my little family in Brooklyn. Said it was time he saw how his favorite legacy was building something meaningful outside the corporate circus. I tried calling my father. He picked up on the third ring. Dad, is it true? My voice cracked, even though I hated that it did. Yes, he said flatly. He passed last night. Heart attack. Silence. I waited for the part where he'd tell me about the funeral. About the arrangements. About how the family would come together. But all I got was, we've decided it's best you don't attend the funeral, Jorge. I laughed. I'm sorry, what? You left the family. You turned your back on everything he built. It would be disruptive if you came back now. Please respect our wishes. Don't complicate things. Then he hung up. That was it. No invitation. No chance to say goodbye. Just erased, like I had never been his grandson. It hit me like a punch to the chest. My hands trembled as I called my aunts, Sylvia and Dolores. My uncle Raul. My cousin Lucas. None of them answered. I texted. Called again. Nothing. Finally, I messaged Eduardo, my grandfather's driver for over 20 years. He had once told me, you're the only real heart in that family, Jorge. If anyone would help me, it was him. He replied in minutes. Lo siento, mijo. I was told not to let you near the estate. I'm sorry. That's when I realized, I wasn't just being left out. I was being shut out. Intentionally. And deep down, I knew why. 2 years earlier, I walked away from Navarro Industries, the clean energy empire my grandfather founded from nothing. I was the only one who didn't play their game. I didn't care about politics, titles, or the boardroom backstabbing. I just wanted to build things that mattered. But they saw me as a threat. My ideas, my ethics, my connection with Abuelo, all of it scared them. Especially my father, Victor Navarro. The man who saw kindness as weakness, and my grandfather's affection for me as a threat to his control. I remembered the last time I was in that mansion. Abuelo had pulled me aside into his library, the only room that still smelled like cigar smoke and old books. He handed me a photo of us from a trip to Guatemala years ago, then said, if something ever happens to me, look behind the photo. The real legacy is never what they expect. At the time, I thought he was just being sentimental. But now I felt something shift in my gut. I wasn't going to let them bury him without saying goodbye. That same day, I packed a bag, kissed my wife Marina goodbye, and promised Lily I'd be back soon. I didn't tell them what I planned. I wasn't sure yet myself. But I knew this, I wasn't going to let the people who treated my grandfather's death like a power play erase me from his life, or his legacy. I drove 6 hours through freezing rain to the Navarro estate in upstate New York. My palms were sweaty the whole ride. My chest was tight. The closer I got, the more it felt like I was heading towards something bigger than grief. The gates were open, and luxury cars lined the driveway. Black suits, fake tears, pearl necklaces, they all filled the courtyard like a scene from some elite funeral drama. But when I stepped out of my car, security moved fast. 2 men I didn't recognize flanked me before I made it to the front door. "You're not on the guest list," one said. "I'm his grandson." The taller one pulled out a phone. He showed me a message from someone labeled VN, my father. "Under no circumstances is Jorge allowed on the property." I froze. I looked up at the mansion windows and saw faces peeking out. My cousin Lucas. My Aunt Sylvia. Even Uncle Raul. They all turned away when they saw me. Like I was a ghost. Then, through the window, I saw my father. Calm. Cold. Smiling. I felt the rage boil up like lava inside me. But I didn't fight the guards. I walked back to my car, eyes burning, fists clenched. When I sat down in the driver's seat, I did cry. Not out of sadness, but fury. They didn't just bar me from the funeral. They tried to rewrite the story of who Abuelo loved. And that was unforgivable. But then, I remembered the photo. The one he gave me before I left Navarro Industries. I pulled it from my backpack. Flipped it over. Opened the frame. Inside was a note, folded tightly and sealed in tape. My grandfather's handwriting. And 4 words written across the top. "Read this when I'm gone." I stared at the note. My hands shook as I peeled the tape back and unfolded the paper, the scent of aged parchment bringing back a wave of childhood memories, of sitting on Abuelo's lap while he read from old journals, of the way he smelled like cedar wood and ink. The letter wasn't long. But it was enough to rip open everything I thought I knew. "Jorge. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry. You were always the one with the heart. The one who saw people, not numbers. I know your father and the others don't see it, but I do. They've tried to control me, isolate me, manipulate my mind and my name. They will forge papers. They will twist the truth. But this letter, is the real truth. I have left you the majority of Navarro Industries. 52% is yours. The official might say otherwise. But that one, was not mine. My fingerprint is at the bottom of this note. Use it. Find the truth. And protect what I built. With pride and love. Abuelo Emilio. At the bottom of the letter, I saw it, his fingerprint in faint black ink, pressed carefully in the corner. I couldn't breathe. He knew. He knew they would do this. That they would shut me out. That they would try to erase his intentions. I sat back, my chest rising and falling like I'd run a marathon. The rage from earlier turned into something else. Grief. Betrayal. Purpose. But the worst part? I knew the will had already been read at the estate. That meant they already buried him, and declared his final wishes. Which means they'd already taken everything. I drove back to Brooklyn in silence. No music. No calls. Just headlights and my thoughts racing faster than the car itself. When I got home, Marina was waiting for me on the couch. She jumped up as soon as I walked in. What happened? What did they say? Jorge. I didn't speak. I just handed her the letter. She read it in stunned silence. Then she looked at me, her eyes wet with fury. They didn't just betray you, she said. They betrayed him. I nodded slowly. They forged the will. They're going to take everything, his legacy, the company, the shares. And no one will question it. Because I walked away. I left the company. Marina stepped closer, her voice quiet but sharp. But he didn't. What? He didn't leave you, Jorge. He trusted you. Gave you the company. He believed in you. They didn't just lie to you. They lied to the world. So now, what are you going to do? I stood there, staring at her, my pulse thudding in my ears. What was I going to do? My family was powerful. Ruthless. Wealthy beyond imagination. They owned politicians, judges, journalists. They could make things disappear overnight. And I was just, me. A project manager at a green tech startup. A man with no army, no boardroom allies, no inheritance. Just a letter. But it was enough. It had to be. The next morning, I took the letter to an old friend, Sarah Reyes. We went to school together, and now she was a probate and estate lawyer in Manhattan with a reputation for taking on impossible cases. When she read the letter, she looked up at me with raised eyebrows. "This is big," she said. "If the will was forged, and this is real, they could be in deep legal trouble." I nodded. "But I need more than just this letter." Sarah leaned back. "Yeah. You need proof the official will was fake. Witness tampering, coercion, fraud, something that shows Emilio didn't sign the one they read at the funeral." She was right. One note with a fingerprint wasn't enough. My family would bury it under expensive lawyers and PR statements. I needed a plan. A real one. And for that, I needed someone who could get into the cracks they tried to seal. I made one more call that day. To the one man who knew how to dig where others couldn't. Jack Morales. A former investigative journalist turned private investigator. He owed me a favor. Years ago, I helped him expose a corrupt energy deal tied to Navarro Industries, a deal my father nearly buried with hush money. When Jack answered, I didn't waste time. "Jack. They forged my grandfather's will. I have proof. But I need more. I need you to help me bring down Navarro Industries." He was silent for a moment. Then he chuckled darkly. "Took you long enough." Jack Morales didn't waste time. He showed up at my apartment 2 days later, wearing his usual battered trench coat and that cynical half-smile that made you feel like he already knew how things would end. We sat at my kitchen table while Marina poured him a cup of coffee. He didn't even take a sip before speaking. "So, they buried the old man, and now they want to bury his truth." I nodded, sliding the letter across the table. Jack studied it, holding it up to the light, then let out a low whistle. "That's definitely Emilio's writing. And this fingerprint? That's smart. Real smart." He knew they'd try to overwrite him. He looked at me, eyes narrowing. "Do you have a copy of the will they read at the funeral?" "No," I said. "They shut me out completely. I only know Henry Velez, the family lawyer, presented it." Jack leaned back, muttering, "Henry Vault Velez. That guy's sealed tighter than a federal safe. But not invincible." I raised an eyebrow. "You think you can get something on him?" Jack gave a humorless grin. "I can get something on anyone." He stood. "Give me a week." That week was the longest of my life. Every night, I stared at the letter, rereading my grandfather's words like scripture. Sometimes, I wondered if I was insane for doing this. For thinking I could go up against a dynasty, with nothing but a hidden note and a PI with a grudge. But then I'd look at Lily sleeping. At Marina working late at her laptop to support us. And I'd remember Abuelo saying, "You have to be stronger than what they think of you." I couldn't back down. Not now. 7 days later, Jack called. "Meet me in Queens. Don't tell anyone you're coming." I took the subway, head down, hoodie up, heart pounding. Jack's office was above a pawn shop. When I walked in, he was waiting with a stack of documents and a flash drive. He slid it across the desk. Here's what I found. I opened the folder and froze. Bank statements. Emails. Transcripts. An encrypted audio file titled, Henry_Velez_Elizabeth Navarro _10_01.m4a. Wait, I whispered. You recorded them? Jack shrugged. Got lucky. Velez isn't as careful as he used to be. His office cleaning service uses smart vacs with audio diagnostics. One of them caught him and your Aunt Elizabeth talking, right before your grandfather died. I plugged in a flash drive and listened, heart pounding. Elizabeth, just make sure the will is airtight. He's too weak to notice now anyway. Velez, I've already removed Jorge's name. 100% of shares go to Victor, you, Charles, and Dolores, split evenly. Elizabeth, he'll be dead in weeks. By the time anyone notices, the ink will be dry. Velez, and the real one. Elizabeth, burn it. I hit pause. My stomach turned. They knew. They knew Abuelo wanted me to inherit the company. And they destroyed his real will. I told you, Jack said quietly. This family doesn't play chess. They play war. I looked up at him. Is this enough to go to court? Not yet, Jack said. You need more. You need someone inside. Someone who saw what happened. Someone they didn't expect. He tapped the folder again. There's a nurse. Maria Vasquez. She was with your grandfather every day in those final weeks. She's the only reason he was lucid. Find her. If anyone knows what really happened, it's her. The next day, Marina helped me track down Maria through her nurse registry profile. She was working nights at a clinic in Yonkers. I waited until she got off shift, then gently approached her in the parking lot. She looked startled at first, until I introduced myself. Jorge Navarro, I said. Emilio's grandson. The one they never mention. Her face softened immediately. Mijo. I was wondering when you'd come. We sat in her car. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a worn notebook. He made me write everything down, she said. He was scared. Said they were watching him. Taking his phone. Reading his emails. But he kept telling me, Jorge will come. He has to know. She opened the notebook. Inside were pages of detailed entries, times, quotes, even his deteriorating handwriting. And then, near the back, a page labeled, Real Will, Draft 3. My name was written at the top. She handed it to me. Jorge, she whispered, her voice trembling. He was never afraid to die. But he was afraid of dying unheard. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. I'm going to make sure the world hears him, I said. And that the people who silenced him regret ever trying. I took Maria's notebook home and sat with it like it was sacred. Each line, each scribbled note she'd written in my grandfather's final weeks, it was like hearing his voice again. And more than that, it was ammunition. Abuelo hadn't just trusted me with his heart. He'd trusted me with his legacy. And now I had the tools to reclaim it. The next morning, I met with Sarah Reyes and Jack Morales in a private legal suite downtown. I spread the documents across the table, Maria's notes, Jack's audio recording, and most importantly, my grandfather's handwritten letter with the fingerprint. Sarah flipped through the notebook, her eyes widening. This is damning, she said. But we still need something irrefutable. A legal smoking gun. Jack nodded. There's one piece missing. We need the fake will they read at the funeral. If we can prove it's forged, signed under duress or fabricated entirely, we've got a case. I clenched my fists. That document's in the family vault. Probably in Henry Valles's hands. Jack smirked. Leave Henry to me. He doesn't know I've got an old friend in his office cleaning crew. And every shredder leaves a trail. Sarah looked at me. If we can get that forged will and compare the signature to Emilio's confirmed fingerprint on your letter, we can ask the court to freeze all company assets pending investigation. Which means they can't keep stealing dividends or selling stock, I said. Exactly. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But this wasn't just about legal battles. This was about exposure. Humiliation. Forcing them to watch their lies unravel in front of the world. I turned to Marina that night. I want to go public. She blinked. Are you sure? Your family controls most of the media outlets tied to Navarro Industries. Then we go to someone they don't own. That's when I thought of Marco, my old college roommate. Now a freelance investigative journalist for The Atlantic. He owed me a favor. I called him that night. Marco, I've got a story that'll make headlines across the country. Corporate fraud, forged wills, betrayal, power, legacy. You in? He paused, then laughed. Send me the files. Over the next week, Jack got to work on the forged will. Meanwhile, Sarah began prepping the emergency injunction to freeze the Navarro board's assets. Marco and I sat in a diner every night, going over timelines, fact-checking statements, compiling email evidence and audio files. And then one afternoon, Jack called. Meet me. I have the will. We met in a parking lot under the Williamsburg Bridge. Jack handed me an envelope with shaking hands. Found it in a shred bin, mostly intact. I matched the paper stock to the family legal printer. Valles tried to destroy it, but not well enough. I pulled out the torn pages, taped and reassembled. At the bottom was a shaky, unfamiliar signature scrawled where my grandfather's name should have been. Jack held up another sheet. This is from a verified real estate deal Emilio signed 6 months before his death. I ran it through a forensic analyst, completely different handwriting. My stomach dropped. They hadn't even forged it well. I handed it all to Sarah, who moved fast. Within 48 hours, she had filed an emergency injunction in state court, requesting a freeze on all Navarro Industries board member dividends. A court-ordered review of the official will. Permission to authenticate the letter with fingerprint analysis. The hearing was set for the following week. But before that, Marco published the story. The Navarro family legacy, fraud, forgery, and the grandson they tried to silence. It dropped on a Monday morning. By noon, it had gone viral. News anchors debated it on TV. Social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForJorge and #NavarroScandal. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, Lily asleep beside me, and Marina's hand on my shoulder. My phone buzzed non-stop, calls from investors, distant family members, even ex-girlfriends. But the only message I cared about came from an unknown number. You think you can destroy us with gossip? You're still nothing. Dad. I stared at the message, rage tightening my chest. No. I wasn't nothing. I was the one thing they never saw coming. I was the truth they tried to bury, and now, I was about to burn their entire lie to the ground. The day of the hearing, I stood outside the Manhattan Superior Court building, my heart pounding like it might escape my chest. I wasn't dressed like the heir of an empire. Just a charcoal gray suit I'd bought on clearance 3 years ago, a cheap tie, and scuffed shoes. But I walked in with something they didn't have, truth. Marina squeezed my hand before I entered the courtroom. Whatever happens in there, she whispered, you already won. You didn't run. I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. The courtroom was packed. Not just with legal teams and the press, but with faces from my past. My father, Victor Navarro, sat at the front with a smug smirk and a custom-tailored Armani suit. Beside him was Elizabeth, stony-faced in a pearl blouse, her fingers tapping a silver pen. Uncle Raoul whispered to Aunt Dolores, their eyes like daggers the moment I entered. They didn't acknowledge me. They didn't need to. Their silence screamed, "You don't belong here." But I sat down anyway. I belonged in this fight more than any of them ever would. The judge, a tall, grizzled woman with steel-gray hair named Honorable Clarissa Beckett, took her seat and motioned the session open. Sarah rose first. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. Your Honor, my client Jorge Navarro presents compelling evidence that the current controlling will of Emilio Navarro, the founder of Navarro Industries, was forged. We submit into evidence a handwritten letter, verified fingerprint, audio recordings of attorney Henry Velez conspiring with Elizabeth Navarro, and corroborated notes from Emilio's nurse documenting coercion and isolation. She passed the documents to the bailiff like a poker player laying down a royal flush. Victor's lawyer, a sleazy man named Reed Stanford, stood immediately. Your Honor, these so-called evidences are circumstantial at best. A handwritten note found in a photo frame. Testimony from a nurse. Sounds like the plot of a bad drama. The official will was signed, notarized, and executed according to state law. Mr. Jorge Navarro has no stake, no standing, and no credibility. I clenched my fists, my jaw tightening. Then Sarah rose again. We'd like to call our first witness. Maria Vasquez. Maria took the stand, calm but trembling. She recounted every detail, Emilio's deteriorating health, how he asked her to record his thoughts, how Elizabeth once burst into the room mid-dictation and threatened her job. She told me, Maria said quietly, if I ever spoke about what I saw, I'd regret it. The courtroom buzzed. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Next, Jack Morales testified. He played the recording, Elizabeth and Velez casually discussing the will forgery like it was Tuesday brunch. I watched my father's jaw twitch. I saw Elizabeth's eye twitch. Uncle Raoul looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. But it wasn't over yet. Sarah brought in the forensic analyst, Dr. Rajan, who confirmed that Emilio's signature on the contested will didn't match any of the dozens of verified documents in his name. And the fingerprint on my letter? Authentic, Rajan said. Beyond any doubt. Victor's lawyer fumbled. Tried to claim manipulation. Said I hired actors. Said Jack was a disgraced journalist. But it didn't matter. The truth was laid out bare. And now it was my turn. Sarah looked at me, silently asking if I was ready. I nodded. I walked to the stand, took the oath, and looked straight at Judge Beckett. My name is Jorge Navarro. I left my family's company because I didn't want to play their game. I didn't want to lie, manipulate, or step on people to climb. But my grandfather, he believed in me. He believed I could lead with integrity, not greed. And they hated that. I turned to the row where my father sat. They shut me out of his funeral. They erased me from the will. But they didn't erase his love. Or his truth. The silence in the room was like gravity, heavy and still. Judge Beckett leaned forward. Thank you, Mr. Navarro. That's enough for today. We adjourned with the court to reconvene the following week for a verdict. Outside, reporters swarmed. Microphones and flashbulbs. I ignored them all. I didn't care about fame. I cared about justice. That night, I sat on the couch holding Lily in my lap. She was coloring a picture, me and her standing next to a giant wind turbine. Daddy, are you gonna fix the company? I smiled, blinking back tears. I'm trying, sweetheart. She grinned. You're gonna win. And for the first time, I almost believed her. The week leading up to the verdict was a blur. News outlets were ablaze with headlines. Navarro family implodes amid will forgery scandal. Grandson vs. Dynasty, the battle for Navarro Industries. Is Jorge Navarro the true heir? Strangers stopped me on the street. Some with sympathy. Others with suspicion. But I didn't care. I was focused. Laser focused on the courtroom, the evidence, the legacy. Until the call came. It was Jack. Jorge. You need to get to my office. Now. Something in his voice made my stomach turn. I arrived 20 minutes later. Jack had printed documents scattered across his desk, emails, transaction logs, notarized letters. His face was pale, like he'd seen a ghost. What's going on? He looked at me like he didn't want to answer. I followed up on one of the shareholder names you gave me, the ones voting in your favor, remember? The ones helping you secure board support. I nodded slowly. Yeah, what about them? He slid a paper toward me. 2 of those votes came from offshore accounts. Both traced back to your wife. I stared at him. No. That's not possible. He handed me more papers. Bank records. Shell corporations. Stock purchases under the name Lighthouse Holdings Limited, signed by Marina R. Navarro. She's been buying up company shares quietly. And she's been in contact with your father. I couldn't speak. My hands trembled. I shook my head. No. Marina wouldn't, she hates my father. Jack's eyes didn't blink. I thought so too. But I found this. He played an audio file. A voice recorder. Garbled at first, then crystal clear. Marina, he doesn't know. Jorge still thinks I'm on his side. Just make sure the board votes go through quietly. Once he wins the chairmanship, we trigger the buyback clause. Victor, my father, and then Navarro returns to family control. You'll be well compensated, Marina. Better than anything Jorge can offer you. My breath left me. I felt like I'd been punched in the soul. She had betrayed me. She. The one person I thought would never, could never, stab me in the back. Everything began to click. The meetings she arranged, the names she suggested for shareholder outreach, the way she always pushed me to be aggressive. She wasn't just supporting me. She was managing me. Using me. All this time, I thought I was building a legacy with her. But I was just a pawn in the last Navarro chess game. I stumbled out of Jack's office and walked until I didn't know where I was. Cold wind whipped through the streets. The lights of Manhattan blurred through tears. I didn't even realize I was crying. I called her. She didn't pick up. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I went home. The apartment was quiet. Lily was at school. And Marina was gone. Just a single note on the counter. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. But you were never going to win without me. And now, it's out of both our hands. I sat on the floor. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just empty. 2 days later, I stood in front of the courtroom again. But something in me had changed. I no longer wanted revenge. I no longer wanted power. I just wanted the truth. I stood before Judge Beckett as Sarah delivered our closing statement. My father looked unshaken. Elizabeth avoided eye contact. The others looked indifferent, just waiting to see who'd walk away with the crown. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to end it. When Judge Beckett spoke, her words cut like thunder. This court finds substantial evidence that the official will of Emilio Navarro was forged, and that the letter presented by Jorge Navarro is authentic. All controlling shares previously redistributed under the fraudulent will shall be returned to their rightful heir. Effective immediately, Jorge Navarro is recognized as the primary shareholder and chairman of Navarro Industries. There was an audible gasp. Then silence. My father stood, then sat back down. Elizabeth's hands clenched so hard her knuckles turned white. And me? I didn't move. Not until I felt a small hand slip into mine. Lily had entered with Sarah at the back. She smiled up at me. "Did you fix it, Daddy?" I knelt down. "I fixed what I could, baby. But I knew the real damage, the one inside me, would take longer." I didn't celebrate the verdict. There were no champagne bottles, no rooftop parties, no victory speeches. How do you celebrate winning a war that left everything in ruins? Navarro Industries was mine now. Legally. Publicly. Fully. But the price? My grandfather was gone. My family had betrayed me. And the woman I thought would grow old beside me had used me like a lever to pry open a vault of power. Still, I showed up the next morning. I walked through the tall glass doors of Navarro headquarters, not as an outsider, but as the rightful heir. People whispered. Stared. Pretended to be busy. But I ignored them. I called a board meeting and stood at the head of the long mahogany table where my grandfather once sat. Victor, Elizabeth, Raoul, and Dolores were absent. They'd been removed. The rest of the board? Cautious but present. Watching. "I'm not here to gloat," I began. "And I'm not here to punish. But we will clean this place from top to bottom. No more fraud. No more lies. No more politics." I paused, letting it sink in. My grandfather believed energy wasn't just business, it was responsibility. If we're going to carry his name, we do it with integrity or not at all. Silence. Then, one by one, they nodded. Not in fear. But in agreement. The next few months were brutal. We audited everything. Cut ties with shady contracts, restructured leadership, and returned salaries stolen under fake bonuses. I promoted younger engineers, real talent. I hired a new CEO to help stabilize operations, Aria Liu, a woman who had led 2 sustainable energy startups and turned them into global players. And slowly, the company began to recover. Our stock started to rise. Our reputation started to heal. But even more importantly, I started to heal. I filed for divorce quietly. Marina didn't contest it. We didn't speak again, not even through lawyers. She got what she wanted, her payout from Victor never came, and without board influence, she disappeared into the shadows of scandal. I kept full custody of Lily. She was the only part of that broken marriage that had ever been real. On weekends, I'd take her to the park or show her solar panel prototypes and let her draw on the whiteboards in my office. She loved it. "Daddy," she said once, "when I grow up, I want to make the world shine." I laughed, but tears threatened behind my smile. "You already do, mi corazón." 6 months later, I stood on the cliffs behind my grandfather's estate, the only part of the Navarro property I hadn't sold off. The rest of the family had scattered. Victor was living in exile in Argentina, stripped of his board privileges and reputation. Elizabeth vanished into London's finance underworld. Raoul and Dolores tried to rally smaller shareholders to launch a lawsuit, but it failed. Public sentiment, and evidence, was against them. They were finished. But I wasn't. I took out my phone and played the old recording of my grandfather's voice, one I'd kept saved since college. It was him telling a story about his first wind turbine project, how it broke down in a storm and he stayed up for 72 hours to fix it with his bare hands. "We don't quit, Jorge," he'd said. "We adjust the sails." I looked up at the sky. "Te amo, abuelo," I whispered. "I kept your promise." Then I scattered his ashes over the sea. Today, Navarro Industries is no longer just a name on buildings. It's a movement. We've built renewable projects across 6 countries. We donate 10% of profits to environmental education for underserved communities. And every major press release ends with my grandfather's signature quote. Legacy isn't built with power, it's built with purpose. And me? I'm not chasing revenge anymore. I'm raising Lily. I'm building a company that deserves its name. And I'm finally at peace with the truth. Because the truth didn't destroy me, it freed me. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.